Sai Kishore, Senior Resident, Department of General Medicine in Sree Balaji Medical College. I have 3 years of experience in teaching and I have 2 articles to my credit. Today we are here to discuss about most common communicable diseases and most burden disease, that is HIV, as well as its opportunistic mucosal infections such as oral aerosol leukoplakia as well as oral candidiasis. So our main objectives of this class will be to learn about HIV transmission rate as well as its life cycle, drugs we are using and how we are going to diagnose and how we are going to prevent. And when you come to aerosol leukoplakia, how we are going to identify a patient and how we are going to treat the patient according to his condition. So coming to the class, HIV is a retrovirus RNA classified into HIV-1 and HIV-2. HIV-1 is responsible for majority of the global infections, whereas HIV-2 is mostly resides over West Africa. So disease progression from primary infection often asymptomatic and presents as acute retroviral infection and as well as clinical latency, which then advanced leads to acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which we call as AIDS. So global epidemiology shows persistence incidence despite ART with significant regional variation in prevalence and access to care. Monitoring the viral load and CD4 count is central to disease staging and prognosis. So when you come to transmission, most common route of transmission is by sexual intercourse. Most common is of heterosexual, whereas homosexual is more getting prevalent in Western countries. Heterosexual, when it's like anal intercourse, is more risk for developing more risk of transmission of HIV than vaginal. After heterosexual and homosexual intercourse, next is of needle injury by IV drug abusers. So when you come to other transmissions which the usually people fear of, like spitting of sputum or throwing of body fluids, it has negligible rate of transmission. So when you come to the natural history, primary HIV infection can may be asymptomatic or present as an acute retroviral syndrome resembling mononucleosis with fever, rash, lymphadenopathy. The rate of progression varies depending upon host factors, viral subtypes, co-infections and ART adherence. When you come to viral subtypes, M subtype in HIV-1 is the most common that became prevalent all over the world. Early identification and initiation of ART slows disease progression and improves the survival. When you come to its life cycle, there is a glycoprotein called a GP120 and 141 over the envelope of the HIV virus, which infuses with CCR5 of CD4 lymphocyte count, through which it enters the host cell, it integrates with DNA of the host cell, it multiplies and it again disintegrates from the HIV host cell, repeating the cycle for its viral replication. So most of this viral replication takes place over the lymphatic drainage or lymph nodes. So when you come to clinical staging, WHO has given us 4 clinical staging to know the progression of disease. There is nothing to do about the treatment, because in treatment we should start the treatment as soon as possible regardless of the staging. So WHO staging has been used to know the progression of the patient. So in stage 1 usually patients are asymptomatic, and when you come to stage 2, the patient will be developing small opportunistic infections like tonsillitis, cheilitis, herpes simplex virus, and weight loss will be there but not more than 10%. When you come to grade 3, patient will be having greater than 10% of weight loss, chronic diarrhea since 1 month, and pulmonary tuberculosis, which is the most common, and pneumonia. And stage 4, patient will be developing more than 10% of the weight loss, as well as HIV wasting syndrome, as well as chronic herpes simplex infection, extrapulmonary TB, and recurrent pneumonias that we are going to see. So these staging we use for only for assessing the progression of disease while patient is on ART treatment. So early identification of clinical staging allows a targeted intervention, reducing the morbidity and mortality. So when you come to diagnose, the first thing that we are going to see in our bloodstream is HIV RNA. After that, P24 antigen. So when you want to diagnose a patient, earliest what we can do is we can see for P24 antigen, and after that P24 antigen, then the ELISA and Western blot, all these can be used. So Western blot is a diagnostic test that we use for HIV. So when you are diagnosing a patient with HIV, single test doesn't indicate the patient may be HIV positive. So you should recheck. First you will be doing with ELISA. ELISA if positive, to confirm you can do a second test, Western blot test. If Western blot test is not available, you can use ELISA test twice to confirm whether patient is suffering from HIV or not. And when you come to the treatment part, we have nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, non-nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, integrase inhibitors, protease inhibitors for ART combination. There were previously so many combinations that were being used, but at present current first line treatment is tenofovir, lamivudine, dolutegravir once a day at fixed time. Tenofovir is of 300 mg, lamivudine of 300 mg, dolutegravir of 50 mg. So the treatment varies depending upon the patient condition. If patient's weight is less than 30 kgs, you can opt for abacavir along with lamivudine along with dolutegravir. If patient has an CKD where his creatinine clearance has been an issue, in that cases you can use abacavir plus lamivudine according to the renal dose plus dolutegravir. So when woman with childbearing age is suffering from HIV, so ART treatment will be of tenofovir, lamivudine, and here we use efavirenz in place of dolutegravir. So what we, after starting the treatment, what we do is we monitor the CD4 count and viral load every 6 months. We make sure that the patient's CD4 count should be greater than 350 and load should be less than 1000. If it's not happening, we should see whether patient has been adherent to the ART treatment or non-adherent. We can call him as non-adherent if you meet greater than two doses in a 30-day period. You can label him as non-adherent. If it's adherent and patient has viral load greater than 5000, then you should see for other combinations. So key HIV associated opportunistic infection: as the disease progresses and viral load increases, the patient and CD4 counts decrease, patient has a risk of developing opportunistic infection. So here are the few opportunistic infections. Mainly fungal infections are oral pharyngeal candidiasis, which we are going to discuss now, pneumocystis jirovecii pneumonia and cryptococcus, and viral infections like CMV retinitis, herpes zoster and HCV reactivation, bacterial infections like Mycobacterium avium complex, TB and recurrent bacterial pneumonia. So recognizing opportunistic infections allows clinicians to stratify and initiate the prophylaxis and monitor ART. Here we discussed only few of the opportunistic infections. There are n number of infections, but what we discussed are what are the common infections that we regularly see in a patient. When you come to oral manifestations, more prominent is oral leukoplakia as well as oral candidiasis. So whenever the patient of opportunistic HIV present to you with white plaque-like lesions over the tongue or buccal mucosa, you should check whether patient is having oral hairy cell leukoplakia or oral candidiasis. Usually oral hairy cell leukoplakia is a white adherent lesion on the lateral lotus of the tongue, commonly seen in immunocompromised patients. It is strongly associated with Epstein-Barr virus infections, reactivated in contrast to HIV-mediated immunosuppressions. Usually HIV, oral hairy cell leukoplakia in HIV patients are asymptomatic, does not scrape off like candidiasis and is associated with clinical markers of HIV infection. Effective ART reduces the incidence and may lead to regression of OHL over time. Differentiating from candida and from leukoplakia from oral hairy leukoplakia is essential for accurate treatment and diagnosis. As oral hairy cell leukoplakia does not respond to antifungals, it's more of dependent on ART treatment, whereas oral candidiasis can respond to antifungals as well as ART. When you come to association, it's strongly associated with advanced HIV infection whose CD4 counts are less than 300, and it's been strongly associated with immunocompromised people who are like transplant recipients or who are in immunocompromised immunosuppressive therapy through a long period. Lesion presence may correlate with viral load and immunosuppression, providing the prognostic insight and untreated HIV. When you come to clinical features, oral hairy leukoplakia presents as white corrugated or hairy plaques predominantly on the lateral lotus of the tongue. Rarely the lesion may involve ventral tongue, buccal mucosa, palate, though lateral tongue remains the hallmark. Lesions are usually bilateral, painless and firmly adherent to mucosa, distinguishing them from scrapable candidiasis. It can coexist with other oral manifestation, necessitating the proper comprehensive oral evaluation. When you come to diagnosis, most of the oral hairy leukoplakia diagnosed by clinical picture at appearance and its location, whereas biopsy is reserved for atypical presentation and suspicious lesions to rule out malignancies or dysplasia. Histopathology shows parakeratosis, epithelial hyperplasia and Epstein-Barr viral inclusions in a superficial epithelium. Differentiation from Candida is critical as Candida plaques are scrapable and often symptomatic and responds to antifungal, whereas oral hairy leukoplakia or cannot be or plaques cannot be scrapped, as well as they are asymptomatic and does not respond to antifungal. Accurate diagnosis prevent unnecessary antifungal therapy and informs ART initiation or optimization. Primary management strategy is immune restoration via ART, which leads to lesion regression over weeks to months. Lesion specific therapy is generally not required unless cosmetic reason or a rare symptomatic irritation. Avoid unnecessary antifungal treatments since oral hairy leukoplakia does not respond to azoles or nystatin. Patient's education is important to reduce anxiety regarding appearance as lesions are benign. Avoid unnecessary antifungal treatment as it can cause resistance. Now we come on to the candidiasis, which is important, which is the most common thing that we are going to see in any immunocompromised patients. Candida species are usually normal commensals inhabiting the skin, GIT tract and oral cavity. In immunocompromised hosts, Candida can shift from colonization to pathogenic overgrowth, causing mucosal or systemic infection. While Candida albicans is most common, non-albicans species like Candida glabrata are increasingly implicated, particularly in invasive diseases. Oral and esophageal candidiasis are common early opportunistic infections in HIV, reflecting the immune compromise. In hospitalized or ICU patient, Candida has been a major cause of bloodstream infection associated with high mortality and morbidity. Risk factors: immunocompromise including HIV with low CD4 count, or patient on prolonged steroid therapy, or patient on prolonged immunosuppressive therapy. Broad spectrum antibiotic disrupt the normal flora when used for prolonged, allowing the Candida overgrowth in mucosa and systemic sites. Indwelling catheters, prosthetic devices and ICU admissions increases the risk of invasive candidiasis. In neonates, low birth weights or prematurity heightens the risk of systemic candidiasis. Malnutrition, diabetes, xerostomia also contribute to mucosal candida colonization and infection. Now we come on to the oropharyngeal candidiasis, where you will be seeing white creamy adherent plaques over the tongue, palate or buccal mucosa. Lesions are typically scrapable, revealing a erythematous base which helps to differentiate from oral hairy leukoplakia, which cannot be scrapped from the mucosa. It may be painless but can be cause mild discomfort as a burning sensation. Usually esophageal candidiasis, they present to you with odonophagia or difficulty in swallowing or retrosternal pain. Diagnosis is usually clinical, but KOH, smear and culture can confirm the species in refractory cases. Prompt antifungal treatment prevents spread to esophageal and systemic diseases. Esophageal candidiasis commonly present, as I told you, with dysphagia, retrosternal pain as well as odonophagia, usually occur in patients who have CD4 count of less than 200. Diagnosis is often empiric based on clinical features or oral thrush, as endoscopy is reserved for atypical or refractory cases. Lesions appear as white plaques or pseudomembranes along the esophageal mucosa. Systemic antifungal treatment therapy, usually oral fluconazole, is effective with symptoms resolution confirming the diagnosis. Severe cases or azoles resistance may require echinocandin or amphotericin B therapy. Cutaneous candidiasis can affect mostly the angular cheilitis, causing painful fissures over the mouth corners. Chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis may occur in T cell immunodeficiencies presented with persistent nail, skin and mucosal infection. Nail involvement onychomycosis can be painful, disfiguring and a portal of systemic infection. Management usually include topical or systemic antifungal depending upon the severity and extent. When you come to most important part of candidiasis, invasive candidiasis, which is responsible for more morbidity and mortality. Invasive candidiasis result from hematogenic spread from GI translocation or contaminated indwelling catheters. Non-albican species are increasingly important due to intrinsic azole resistance, requiring species level identification for therapy guidance. Blood culture imaging are crucial for diagnosis and source control, including the catheter removal. Early initiation of echinocandins is recommended in critically ill patients until susceptibility results are available. Diagnosis of oropharyngeal candidiasis is primarily clinical based on the presence of white scrapable lesions over oral mucosa. Esophageal candidiasis is often diagnosed empirically in HIV patients presenting with dysphagia or odonophagia, especially when oral thrush is present. Endoscopy we do only in atypical presentation or to rule out any other coexisting infections. KOH smear, fungal culture, and histopathology may be used in atypical or refractory cases to confirm the Candida species. Blood cultures are essential for diagnosing the Candida or invasive diseases with specific identification, guiding targeted therapy. Early and accurate diagnosis prevents progression to systemic infection and improves the outcome. Candida treatment, what we use is topical therapy, nystatin suspension or cotrimoxazole ointments is used for mild oropharyngeal candidiasis. Oral fluconazole is preferred for moderate to severe recurrent infection or esophageal involvement. Duration of therapy depends upon where the lesions are. 7 to 14 days are usually used for oropharyngeal, and 14 to 21 days therapy has been used for esophageal involvement, adjusting based on the clinical response. In refractory cases, consider patient as species as azole resistant and start alternative like itraconazole or posaconazole. Adjunctive measures including oral hygiene is of optimal importance. Patient's education on adherence and follow-up ensures complete resolution and reduces the risk of relapse. Candida treatment in invasive candidiasis, what we use is echinocandins like caspofungin, micafungin or first-line therapy for critically ill patients or suspected azole-resistant candidiasis. Step-down therapy to fluconazole is considered once the patient stabilized and susceptibility has been confirmed. Source control including removal of infected catheters or prosthetic devices is essential for treatment success. Monitor for hepatic and renal toxicity during systemic antifungal therapy, as antifungal drugs are prone for renal or hepatic failures. Early intervention significantly reduces the mortality and systemic complication in invasive candidiasis. For Candida prophylaxis, most important part is routine for antifungal prophylaxis should not be given to all patients. Targeted prophylaxis may be appropriate for high-risk immunocompromised individuals such as transplant recipients or prolonged neutropenia. Removal or replacement of colonized catheters, prosthetic devices help to prevent invasive candidiasis. Monitoring for early signs of infection recurrence allows the timely therapeutic intervention. Tailoring the prophylaxis based on the risk stratification and local epidemiology optimizes the outcome and limits the resistance. Now, when you come to the white lesions, there are other conditions that were present as white oral lesions other than oral hairy leukoplakia and Candida. Other lesions are idiopathic leukoplakia, lichen planus, traumatic keratosis. What overview in opportunistic infection or ART is the central tool for preventing and reversing HIV-associated opportunistic infection, including the oral hairy leukoplakia and candidiasis. Timing of ART initiation related to acute opportunistic infections may influence immune reconstant inflammatory syndrome, which we call it as IRIS. Integrating ART with prophylactic and therapeutic strategies ensures the comprehensive management of HIV-related opportunistic infections. When you come to preventive care in HIV, preventive care includes vaccination against. Preventive care of opportunistic infection in HIV can be influenced by vaccination with influenza, pneumococcal, hepatitis A, B, which we commonly see associated with HIV patient. Opportunistic infection prophylaxis is guided by CD4 threshold. Oral health surveillance helps detect early oral hairy leukoplakia candidiasis, allowing prompt intervention. Behavior counseling on safe sexual practices, needle hygiene and ART adherence is critical for prevention. Comprehensive preventive care minimizes the morbidity, hospitalization and long-term complication in patients living with HIV. With this, we complete our session for today. I will come back with another interesting topic next time.